When the night falls over Massachusetts, the state's bridges become more than just paths from one side to another. They become gateways. Gateways to the past, to tragedy, and sometimes to something that still lingers. If you listen closely while crossing one of these old spans, after midnight, you might hear the wind whistling through rusted beams. But sometimes, that sound isn't the wind. It's the soft cry of someone who never made it across. Tonight, we take a midnight drive through the 25 most haunted bridges in Massachusetts, places where history bleeds into the present, and the living walk side by side with the restless dead. The Cooper Street Bridge in Agawam is an unassuming structure by daylight, a simple span crossing a narrow, dark waterway. Cars glide over it without hesitation during rush hours. Pedestrians stroll across without a second thought, and the surrounding street seems no different from any other in town. Yet, as the clock ticks past 2 a.m., the bridge transforms. Locals whisper of sounds that shouldn't exist, sights that defy logic, and a darkness that feels almost alive. As if the water below and the steel above hold memories that refuse to fade. The legend begins decades ago with a young couple, known for their love and reckless charm. On a bitterly cold winter night, their car skidded on the icy road leading to Cooper Street Bridge. Witnesses said they lost control near the edge, and the vehicle plunged into the frigid water below. Rescue crews arrived too late. Both were claimed by the river's unforgiving currents. Their deaths were tragic but unspectacular, or so the world thought. In Agawam, however, tragedy is rarely left alone, and the bridge has never been the same. In the hours when most of the town sleeps, witnesses recount eerie experiences. Drivers crossing the bridge after 2 a.m. report hearing a splash, sudden and sharp, as if a body had hit the water, followed immediately by the frantic gasping of someone struggling for air. The sound comes from nowhere in particular, echoing from under the bridge, from the water itself, or perhaps from the thin mist that hangs over the river at that hour. Some say it's the couple, replaying the final moments of their lives, caught in a loop of panic and cold. Others claim it is something darker, a lingering sorrow that feeds on fear. More unsettling are the visual apparitions. Many drivers swear they have seen wet handprints appear on their windshields as they approach the bridge, dripping like condensation, but impossible to wipe away. Panic sets in when a figure emerges from the guardrail, a woman, soaked to the bone, her clothes clinging, hair plastered to her face, staring silently. She doesn't speak, doesn't move toward them, yet the weight of her gaze is enough to freeze the heart. Some drivers report that as soon as they reach the middle of the span, the figure disappears, leaving only the chilling sensation of being watched and the faint smell of cold river water. Pedestrians crossing the bridge are not spared. Those who brave the structure in the dead hours describe the water below as unnaturally black, reflecting nothing at all, as if the river itself has swallowed the night. Some hear footsteps along the planks behind them, though no one walks beside them. Others feel the temperature drop sharply, a damp chill that clings to clothing and skin, even when the wind is still. Occasionally, an invisible hand brushes their shoulder, leaving a tingling that lingers long after they reach the other side. Locals offer conflicting advice for avoiding encounters, though few take it seriously, and fewer dare to defy the 2 a.m. threshold. Some insist that playing the radio softly will keep the spirits at bay, that no vehicle should cross the bridge faster than a crawl, or that drivers must avoid looking directly at the water. Others, more pragmatic, shrug off the stories as folklore, a way to explain the inevitable shivers and startled hearts that come with quiet nights and shadowed streets. But the consistent reports, the handprints, the gasps, the soaked woman, suggest something more than rumor. The bridge has become a testing ground for thrill seekers and ghost hunters. Those armed with cameras and audio recorders often return with recordings of unexplained splashes, distorted voices, or fleeting shadows on the edge of the frame. Night vision footage sometimes captures the silhouette of a figure standing at the guardrail, only to vanish moments later. Even experienced paranormal investigators admit to a creeping sense of unease when on the bridge. as though the water and the steel hold an awareness of trespassers, acknowledging their presence with whispers and cold fingers of wind. The Cooper Street Bridge is deceptively ordinary by day, yet under the cloak of night, it becomes a portal to a moment frozen in terror. The water below, still in appearance, is anything but calm. The bridge itself seems to remember the crash, the panic, and the final struggle of the young couple who met their end there, in the darkness. The line between the living and the dead blurs, and the bridge functions as both witness and participant. Those who cross at the wrong hour may see, hear, or feel the traces of lives interrupted, an echo of fear that refuses to fade. The Purgatory Chasm Bridge in Sutton is more than just a passage over a rugged gorge. It is a threshold between the world of the living and a shadowed domain where sorrow lingers. By day, hikers cross it with little thought, pausing to admire the rocky walls of the chasm, the sunlight glinting off the stone, and the murmuring brook below. But as twilight fades and darkness settles, the bridge transforms. The air grows unnaturally cold, carrying a weight that presses against your chest, and the quiet is broken by sounds that defy explanation. Purgatory Chasm has long been known for its eerie energy. Locals speak of the gorge as a place where grief and anger have settled into the very stone, and the bridge at its entrance has become a focal point for that lingering unease. Visitors often report hearing rocks tumbling and clattering in the dark, though when they peer over the edge or look around, nothing has moved. Some claim the sounds are echoes from centuries past, landslides, accidents, or desperate acts that left their mark in the chasm, replaying like a ghostly loop. Others insist it is something more, an unseen presence, signaling its awareness of intruders crossing its bridge. The bridge itself is small and deceptively fragile in appearance, though sturdy enough for hikers and local travelers. Those who step onto it often notice the temperature drop immediately, a cold that isn't born of wind or weather. The chill seeps through clothing and skin, and some say it carries with it the scent of damp earth and stone, mingled with something metallic, almost like rusted iron. Along with the cold comes the whispers, low, indecipherable, and persistent. They seem to rise from beneath your feet, drifting up from the gorge below, circling the edges of your mind. Even the most skeptical hikers report a creeping sense of dread as the whispers grow louder, though no source is ever found. One of the most enduring stories involves a man said to have ended his life by hanging under the bridge. According to local legend, despair consumed him on a bitter winter night, and he chose the span above the chasm as the final place to confront his sorrow. Since then, many have claimed to see the shadow of a rope swinging faintly beneath the bridge, visible only when the moon is low and the fog clings to the rocks. Some say the rope sways on its own, as if the man's anguish still resonates in the air, a silent testament to despair that refuses to let go. Visitors crossing the bridge report a range of unsettling experiences. Some feel a sudden tug at their ankle, like a hand gripping them briefly before vanishing. Others hear soft sobs or muttered warnings just at the edge of hearing. The shadows cast by the bridge seem to move independently, stretching and twisting across the rocky walls of the chasm in ways that defy light and logic. A handful of hikers describe feeling the sensation of being watched from both above and below, as if unseen eyes track their every step. The combination of physical and psychological phenomena has made the bridge a magnet for thrill seekers and paranormal investigators. Cameras, recorders, and thermal imaging devices have captured oddities that defy simple explanation. Shadows appear in places with no source. Inexplicable cold spots emerge suddenly, and faint voices echo when no one else is present. Even seasoned ghost hunters report an oppressive weight while on the bridge, a sensation of being tethered to the memories held within the chasm. Purgatory Chasm Bridge is not just a crossing. It is a liminal space where time and tragedy converge. The rocks beneath, the air above, and the narrow planks that carry the living all seem to store fragments of sorrow, replaying them for anyone willing or foolish enough to notice. Every whisper, every shadow, every sudden shiver tells the story of loss and despair embedded in the landscape. The bridge itself feels alive, a sentinel of grief that responds to the presence of those who cross it. Even when no one is present, the bridge seems to hum with memory. The shadows of a rope, the whispers from below, and the echoes of unseen movement persist, creating an atmosphere where the line between past and present blurs. Hikers, late-night wanderers, and curious onlookers are reminded that Purgatory Chasm is not merely a scenic landmark, it is a repository of emotions and events that refuse to be forgotten. The Salem Turnpike Bridge in Danvers is a narrow steel span that stretches over a quiet stretch of road, connecting old neighborhoods and forgotten fields. By daylight, it is unremarkable, a simple bridge, rusted in places, carrying cars and commuters from one side of town to the other. Its steel frame groans under the weight of traffic, and the occasional gust of wind whistles through its beams. Yet, beneath its ordinary surface lies a dark history, one that has left a lingering imprint on the bridge, the road, and the surrounding air. The story begins in the late 1800s, during a time when stagecoaches were a primary means of travel. On a foggy autumn evening, a coach carrying passengers attempted to cross what would later become known as the Salem Turnpike Bridge. The night was cold, visibility poor, and the driver, perhaps pressed for time, misjudged the approach. The horses panicked, wheels hit the edge of the bridge, and the coach toppled into the water and rocks below. Multiple lives were lost in the accident, and the cries of passengers echoed across the dark landscape. The tragedy was reported in local papers, but over the years, it became more than just a historical footnote. It became a story whispered among residents, one that continued to haunt the bridge long after the steel rusted and the original structure was reinforced. Locals today speak of encounters that defy explanation. Motorists driving across the Salem Turnpike Bridge after dark often report seeing a ghostly stagecoach and horses suddenly appear before them. The apparition glides across the bridge with an otherworldly stillness, its wheels turning silently at first, then clattering as if echoing the sounds of the past. Some drivers swerve instinctively, only to find the road empty moments later. The coach vanished halfway through the span, leaving no tracks, no wheels, no evidence it was ever there. Witnesses described the horse's eyes as hollow and the driver as a pale figure, frozen in a posture of desperate control. Paranormal investigators have long been drawn to the site. Using EVP recorders, they have captured faint but unmistakable sounds, the rhythmic clattering of horseshoes on steel, the creak of leather harnesses, and, hauntingly, a woman's scream, sharp, terrified, echoing across the quiet Massachusetts night. The scream is said to belong to a passenger, perhaps the stagecoach driver's wife or a traveling woman whose life ended in that dark plunge. Occasionally, these recordings also include faint whispers, incomprehensible murmurs that seem to drift from the steel beams themselves, as if the bridge itself remembers the tragedy and refuses to let it go. Those who walk the bridge at night report an oppressive chill, far colder than the Massachusetts air should allow. The wind seems to move in unnatural patterns, funneling through the rusted framework and carrying faint, indistinct voices. Some have seen shadows flit along the beams, fleeting forms that vanish when approached. Others describe a sensation of being watched, the hair on their arms standing on end as if the spirits of the passengers linger, aware of every movement, every heartbeat. Even drivers who take the bridge during daylight sometimes feel the echo of past horrors, a subtle unease, a sense that the air carries weight far heavier than it should. The bridge itself, rusted and worn, seems alive in some intangible way, a vessel of grief and fear that stretches across time. The shadows of the original stagecoach, the echoes of panicked screams, and the clatter of hooves remain embedded in its steel, replaying for those sensitive enough to notice. Stories from local residents reinforce the bridge's reputation. An elderly man recalls seeing a pale woman in a long dress step off the coach at the far end, only to dissolve into mist as he approached. A teenager tells of headlights catching the reflection of the coach in the rearview mirror, the horse's eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. Each account adds to the sense that the Salem Turnpike Bridge is not merely a crossing, but a point where the present intersects with a tragic past, where history refuses to remain silent. The bridge continues to draw ghost hunters, thrill seekers, and cautious locals alike. Tripods and cameras are set up at its ends. EVP recorders hum quietly in the night, and flashlights sweep across steel beams and wooden planks. Many leave with nothing more than an uneasy feeling, but some return with recordings and photographs showing faint shapes, streaks of light, and the unmistakable outline of a stagecoach suspended in the dark. The Bridge Street Bridge in Salem is an unassuming structure by day. It's steel and stone, spanning the calm waters of the river that winds through the historic town. But by night, the bridge transforms into something far more sinister. A liminal space where the echoes of Salem's darkest history cling to the air. Here, the shadow of the town's witch trials seems to linger, leaving a mark that ordinary eyes cannot always see. Locals say the bridge is cursed, that every plank and railing carries the weight of the condemned souls who once faced their final moments nearby. During the late hours, the atmosphere around the street bridge changes dramatically. A chill creeps along the riverbank, far colder than the night should allow, and the fog rising from the water seems to thicken, curling in strange shapes around the iron railings. Walkers often report feeling a sudden draft of icy air brush past them, though no wind stirs. The sensation is accompanied by the unmistakable sound of footsteps behind them, slow, deliberate, echoing against a stone, yet impossible to locate. When they turn to look, the path is empty, the night calm again, as if the footsteps were never there. The bridge crosses the very river that bore witness to so much of Salem's grim history. The water has long been rumored to have seen executions, secret burials, and clandestine acts of violence tied to the hysteria of the witch trials. It is said that the condemned men and women accused of dark practices could feel the weight of their fate as they were led across the very spot where the bridge now stands. Today, some visitors claim they can sense those same shadows still moving, as if the spirits are eternally bound to the river and the bridge, forever retracing their final steps. Witnesses describe seeing fleeting figures at the edges of their vision, dark shapes that vanish the moment they focus on them. Occasionally, a translucent form appears, walking solemnly across the bridge, sometimes accompanied by a faint, hollow wail. Some say these are the spirits of the condemned, souls trapped in a liminal state, walking toward redemption they can never reach. Others report seeing small, glowing orbs hovering near the railings, drifting slowly along the path like lanterns held by unseen hands. Locals warn that the bridge responds to fear. Those who approach it with skepticism might hear nothing more than the river's gentle murmur, while those who come with curiosity or dread often encounter sensations that cannot be explained. Clothing may suddenly feel damp with mist. The footsteps behind quicken or slow in response to movement, and some have even reported the sensation of a hand grazing their shoulder, light as air, yet impossibly real. Paranormal investigators are drawn to the bridge like moths to a flame. EVP recorders capture whispers that rise and fall, sometimes in syllables that almost form words, sometimes in faint cries that seem to echo from the river itself. Cameras occasionally record shadows crossing the span where no one is present, and infrared equipment detects heat signatures that vanish as soon as they are noticed. Even seasoned investigators report an oppressive weight on their chests, a feeling that the bridge itself is aware of their presence, evaluating them, testing them. One of the most chilling aspects of the Street Bridge is its connection to history. Residents of Salem tell stories passed down through generations. A woman accused of witchcraft seen pacing the bridge in a flowing gown, her arms reaching out as if pleading for understanding. A man bound in chains, walking to the riverbank as if condemned to repeat the journey he could not escape. Children who vanished during the hysteria now glimpsed as tiny, fleeting figures darting between the shadows of the railings. Each story feeds into the lore, reinforcing the sense that the bridge is a living relic of fear, guilt, and unresolved judgment. Even casual visitors feel the weight of the place. A solitary walker may suddenly feel the sensation of time slowing, footsteps echoing long after they have passed, as if the bridge remembers every step ever taken across it. The fog thickens unnaturally, muffling sound and distorting shapes, making it difficult to discern reality from apparition. Lights from the town on either side sometimes shimmer in strange ways, casting moving shadows that suggest figures standing where no one could be. The street bridge, is not just a crossing over water. It is a threshold between the present and the echoes of Salem's darkest nights. The spirits of the condemned, the remnants of fear and hysteria, seem to linger in the cold air and the mist, walking endlessly toward a redemption that may never come. The footsteps, the icy drafts, the fleeting shadows, all serve as reminders that the past is never truly gone, that the weight of history can be felt in every gust of wind and every echo of the river. The Bridge of Flowers in Shelburne Falls, Massachusetts, is a place of unexpected contrasts. By day, it is a picturesque marvel, a former trolley bridge transformed into a garden path, lined with vibrant blooms and cascading vines. Tourists wander along its walkway, pausing to photograph the colorful petals spilling over the sides. The sunlight glinting off the river below. Birds flit among the flowers, and the air carries the soft perfume of roses, daisies, and wildflowers in full bloom. Yet beneath this cheerful exterior lies a darker story, one that emerges when the sun dips below the horizon and the bridge falls into shadow. Long before the Bridge of Flowers became a haven for gardeners and photographers, it served a very different purpose. Trolleys clanged across its steel structure, carrying workers and travelers from one side of the river to the other. The bridge was a vital artery for the community, but with progress came tragedy. One evening in the early 20th century, a trolley conductor, known for his punctuality and strict adherence to the schedule, met a horrifying fate. Accounts say he slipped near the tracks while signaling an incoming car, falling beneath the wheels. The accident was brutal, instantaneous, and witnessed by a few late passengers who could do nothing but scream. The river claimed what remained of him, and the community mourned. But the place where he died never fully let go of his presence. Today, the bridge is serene, almost impossibly beautiful, but those who venture there after dusk tell a different story. The once bustling trolley tracks now lie hidden beneath soil and blooms, but the air seems charged, as if the steel beneath still remembers. Visitors often speak of rustling flowers when no wind stirs. Petals quiver, vines sway, and the soft rustle seems to mimic footsteps, following anyone brave enough to cross the bridge after dark. Some insist the sound is deliberate, a warning from the past. Then there are the sightings. Many people have reported seeing a figure under the moonlight, a man in old-fashioned overalls, standing rigid and silent among the shadows of the flowers. He appears faceless, his features obscured, as though the river itself erased them, yet there is an unmistakable sense that he is watching. Walkers freeze, hearts hammering, feeling the weight of his gaze even when no eyes are visible. The figure rarely moves, yet it is often spotted in different locations upon successive crossings. As if retracing the path, he could not escape the night he died. Some believe this faceless figure is the conductor himself, tethered to the bridge by the trauma of his death. He walks among the flowers, unseen by day, but drawn to the quiet and solitude of night. His presence is accompanied by a deep, unsettling stillness. Birds fall silent, and the river seems to slow beneath the steel arches. Even those passing in cars along the adjacent roads report an inexplicable chill, a sudden drop in temperature, as if the shadow under the moonlight reached beyond the bridge to touch them. Paranormal enthusiasts have taken to visiting the bridge, cameras and EVP recorders in tow. Many have claimed success capturing strange phenomena. Footsteps recorded in the dead of night appear to move against the natural rhythm of the boardwalk. EVP recordings sometimes carry faint murmurs, a man's voice calling out, fragmented syllables, barely distinguishable but undeniably human. Some capture a sharp intake of breath, reminiscent of a person falling, followed by an eerie silence that lasts far longer than the natural decay of sound. Locals warn that the bridge responds to emotion. Those who cross it with skepticism may feel nothing, while those who approach with fear or curiosity often experience a heaviness in the air, a sensation of being followed. Some claim to have touched the flowers and felt them pulse under their fingers. A subtle, unnatural vibration, as if the bridge itself were alive, channeling the memory of the conductor's final moments into every petal and stem. Stories handed down through generations reinforce the bridge's haunted reputation. Some speak of hearing the conductor's whistle, soft and mournful, drifting across the river on foggy nights. Others recall glimpsing the man's reflection in puddles along the walkway. The familiar shape of overalls and posture, but no face, no detail, only the sense of longing and despair. Children playing near the bridge sometimes stop abruptly, pointing to empty spaces, insisting a man stands watching them silently, and then vanish before anyone can confirm what they saw. The Bridge of Flowers is a place where beauty and tragedy coexist. By day, it is a sanctuary of color and life. By night, it is a monument to a life cut short and the lingering presence that death could not release. The rustling flowers, the faceless man, the whisper of footsteps over the steel tracks buried beneath blooms, all serve as reminders that the past does not always remain buried. Some tragedies leave a mark so profound that even time cannot erase them. The Chesterfield Gorge Bridge, nestled deep in the Berkshires of Massachusetts, is a place where nature's beauty meets an unsettling sense of foreboding. By day, the bridge appears harmless, even serene, stretching across a roaring gorge where the river carves jagged paths through the forest. Mist often rises from the water, curling around the rocks below and drifting like phantoms among the towering pines. Hikers and photographers are drawn to the area for its breathtaking views. The sound of rushing water mingling with birdsong, and the quiet solitude that comes from being far from town. Yet by night, the Chesterfield Gorge Bridge transforms into something far darker. A place where the air itself seems charged with unseen eyes watching from the shadows. For decades, stories have circulated about the strange experiences of those who linger after sunset. Locals warn that the bridge carries a history that ordinary eyes cannot see. They speak of travelers who have reported hearing cries for help echoing from the depths of the gorge, voices so desperate and raw that they seem impossibly alive. Yet when anyone peers over the edge, the gorge below is empty, nothing more than jagged rocks, rushing water, and the occasional deer or stray animal. The cries, it seems, are not of the living but of something else. Something trapped in the shadows of the cliffside, replaying a tragedy long forgotten. Those who venture onto the bridge after dark often feel an unnerving presence. Many describe a sudden chill, a cold that seems to seep through clothing and bone, clinging to them as if the fog itself has a will. Some hikers speak of hearing footsteps behind them, even when they are alone. The crunch of boots on gravel or the soft slap of shoes on wooden planks echoing in rhythm with their own. Others report the sensation of being pushed from behind, an invisible hand nudging them closer to the edge. As though whatever haunts the bridge seeks company in the depths below. Paranormal investigators have taken an interest in Chesterfield Gorge Bridge for years. EVP recordings capture fragmented whispers that rise and fall, some indistinguishable but others hauntingly clear. A panicked plea for help, a name called out in terror, or the faint echo of a fall. Cameras have recorded blurred figures darting along the walkway, shadows that appear solid but vanish when approached. Even the mist itself seems alive on certain nights, swirling unnaturally against the wind, forming shapes that resemble human silhouettes clinging to the rocks below or standing just beyond the railings. The bridge's history adds weight to the eerie experiences. While official records show no recent deaths, locals remember tragedies dating back generations. Stories of travelers slipping on the slick wooden planks, young couples vanishing while exploring the gorge, and tales of those who wandered too far into the fog never to return. Whether these accounts are fact or folklore, the energy of the place suggests that something lingering here is tied to past misfortune. An echo of grief and fear, so strong that it can still reach the living. Visitors often describe the emotional weight of the place. Even those skeptical of ghosts feel a pressure, a tightness in the chest that grows with each step along the bridge. The fog thickens, muffling sound and distorting distance, making it difficult to judge how far away the river truly is below. Shadows dance across the planks, shifting just beyond the edge of vision, and the rustle of unseen movement is constant, whether in the treetops or along the bridge itself. Some hikers swear they hear soft sobs, the sound of someone clinging to life, just beyond their reach. One recurring account involves the sensation of being watched. People report a tingling along the spine, the unmistakable feeling that eyes follow them, no matter where they look. Some claim to see vague outlines of figures among the mist or on the opposite bank, standing motionless yet somehow aware. The air is heavy with an oppressive presence, as if the gorge itself has memories and is unwilling to let visitors pass unchallenged. There are those who claim to have narrowly escaped being pulled from the bridge. They speak of an invisible force pressing against their back, forcing them to stumble or grasp desperately at the railings. In these moments, the wind seems to carry whispers, guiding them to safety while taunting them with the knowledge of what could have been. Even when the immediate danger passes, the memory lingers. A warning not to underestimate the unseen forces that roam Chesterfield Gorge. The Chesterfield Gorge Bridge is more than a crossing over water. It is a threshold between the world of the living and the echoes of the past. The cries, the pushes, the shifting mist, and unseen presences all serve as reminders that the gorge has a memory, a will, and perhaps a hunger that stretches beyond the comprehension of those who cross it. Every rustle of fog, every rush of water, every whispered plea from the depths is a testament to lives lost, fears endured, and spirits that remain tethered to the bridge. The Concord Bridge, better known as the Old North Bridge, spans the tranquil waters of the Concord River in Massachusetts, a site forever etched in the history of the American Revolution. By day, the bridge appears serene and picturesque, framed by leafy trees and calm waters that ripple in the afternoon breeze. Tourists stroll across it, cameras in hand, enjoying the historic significance of the place. Yet beneath its wooden planks and weathered railings lies an energy that is far older, far more restless than most visitors can comprehend. The bridge is not just a crossing over water, it is a crossing through time, where echoes of the past refuse to stay silent. On quiet evenings, when the sun dips low behind the horizon, those who linger on the bridge report a transformation. The air grows cooler, heavy with the tension that seems to vibrate through the boards beneath their feet. Musket smoke, faint but pungent, drifts along the river, and the soft clatter of footsteps appears in perfect rhythm, as though a regiment of soldiers is marching from one end of history to the other. Some visitors have even described seeing figures in faded blue and brown uniforms, their muskets held at ready, moving silently across the bridge in formations that seem precise and deliberate. These apparitions vanish the moment someone tries to approach, leaving behind only the lingering scent of gunpowder and the uneasy sense of being watched by history itself. The sounds of war are never far from the bridge's ghostly presence. At night, some have reported hearing the faint roll of a drum line, the cadence of military life long past, carrying across the river in a way that makes the heart pound in recognition and fear. The drum beats are irregular at first, then rhythmically precise, almost as though invisible hands are playing a tune that both honors and mourns the fallen. These sounds are often accompanied by soft whispers, soldiers calling out to comrades who never returned, or commands shouted too quietly for modern ears to fully understand. The air seems to hum with these vibrations, a resonance that is felt in the chest as much as it is heard. Many claim that the bridge itself reacts to those who step upon it after dark. Some report that the planks beneath their feet vibrate, as though the bridge is alive with the memory of footsteps long gone. Shadows stretch across the water in ways that defy logic, and mist rising from the river often coils in shapes reminiscent of tents, wagons, and campfires from a time when war was the only certainty. Occasionally, a visitor will see a lone soldier standing guard at the bridge's midpoint, musket aimed at nothing, as if protecting the land from both the past and the present. This spectral sentinel disappears with a blink, leaving an empty river and an unnerving silence that feels heavier than before. The history of the Old North Bridge only deepens the sense of unease. On April 19, 1775, this was the site where colonial militia and British troops first clashed, and the first shots of the American Revolution rang across the river. Blood was shed, lives were changed, and a nation was born in the fog of uncertainty and fear. It is said that the spirits of those who fell that day never truly left, tied to the bridge by honor, by anger, and by the lingering violence that ended lives before their time. Some visitors have reported seeing spectral figures crouched near the riverbanks, mimicking the moments before the battle, loading muskets, or calling out to unseen comrades. Others claim to have glimpsed a phantom officer raising a hand to signal a charge, only for the figure to dissolve into the night air, as if swallowed by history itself. Sightings are not limited to the battlefield alone. Some locals speak of moments when the bridge seems to thrum underfoot, vibrating with a low, almost musical tone. Couples walking hand in hand at dusk have felt sudden chills and seen fleeting visions of soldiers flanking them, the air thick with the scent of gunpowder and smoke. Hikers and history enthusiasts have reported feeling watched even when no one is in sight, the hairs on their arms rising as though the bridge itself is aware of every footstep. Paranormal investigators have flocked to the site, setting up cameras, recording devices, and EMF detectors, all hoping to capture evidence of the bridge's restless spirits. EVPs often reveal faint commands, whispers, or the unmistakable sound of musket fire and drum beats, leaving no doubt that something from the past still roams the bridge. Some recordings even capture the voices of men shouting, not in anger, but in warning or sorrow, their tone carrying centuries of unresolved tension. Visitors have reported cameras malfunctioning or capturing images of shadows that vanish when approached, adding to the lore of a bridge alive with unseen presence. The Concord Bridge is not merely a historic landmark. It is a living memorial to sacrifice, courage, and the high price of freedom. Every plank, every beam, every shadow seems charged with memories that refuse to fade. Crossing it at night is to step into another era, to hear the muffled commands of soldiers, to feel the vibrations of drumlines and marchers long gone. The bridge hums, it watches, and it remembers. For those who dare to linger after dark, the Old North Bridge offers a glimpse into the eternal presence of history itself, a reminder that liberty was forged in blood and that some echoes never truly fade. The Fairhaven Bridge spans a quiet stretch of water along the harbor, its weathered planks and steel supports stretching across the misty currents like a link between the living and the dead. By day, it is a simple, functional crossing, frequented by commuters and the occasional curious tourist, its wooden boards creaking underfoot with the rhythm of ordinary life. But as night falls and fog creeps in from the harbor, the bridge takes on a different character entirely. Locals have long referred to it as the Bridge of the Dead, a name whispered with both reverence and fear. For it is said that those who died at sea have never truly left Fairhaven. The stories begin with the fishermen. Generations of them have navigated the harbor's waters, braving storms and treacherous tides, and almost all have at least one tale of the bridge after dark. They describe glowing orbs, small and faint at first, appearing in the mist as they approach. The lights hover above the wooden planks, drifting slowly along the bridge, as if tracing a path known only to the dead. At times, the orbs cluster in groups, moving together in a dance that mirrors the ebb and flow of the harbor tides. Some fishermen swear the lights are tethered to something, to the souls of sailors lost at sea, following the same route night after night, forever bridging the distance between land and water. Pedestrians who venture across the bridge after dark describe a thick, almost tangible fog that seems to hug their legs and twist around their bodies, heavier than any natural mist. The air smells faintly of salt and old timber, mixed with something unidentifiable, yet unmistakably ancient. Footsteps echo unnaturally on the bridge, often matching the rhythm of the traveler's own, until they suddenly falter, replaced by the soft whisper of waves against pilings and the faintest, most mournful sigh. It is in these moments that the bridge feels alive, as if it remembers every soul who ever passed across it, and is quietly guiding them back to the harbor, where their journeys ended. Witnesses often report seeing shadowy figures moving through the fog, their forms indistinct, their features blurred. They walk slowly, sometimes pausing to look over the railing toward the dark waters below. Some figures appear to carry lanterns, though the light is cold and pale, casting no warmth, only a faint glow that dances over the planks. These apparitions do not acknowledge the living. They move with purpose, as if compelled by a force older than the town itself, tracing paths that have been followed countless times. At times, a solitary fisherman might catch sight of a figure rising from the water, stepping onto the bridge, only to vanish the instant he raises a hand in greeting. Local legends claim that the orbs and figures are the spirits of sailors who perished during violent storms, fishing accidents, or shipwrecks near the harbor. Families speak of loved ones who never returned, of bodies lost to the sea, and of funerals that left graves empty. The bridge, in their view, is a liminal space, a place where the dead can step out of the water and follow a path they can no longer walk in life. It is said that on foggy nights, when the air is thick and the harbor is silent, the bridge becomes a conduit, allowing the lost to cross once more between the world of the living and the world beneath the waves. Those brave enough to linger on the bridge report sudden chills, even in warm weather, as if the spirits themselves are aware of trespassers. Some feel hands brushing past them, though no one is there. Others hear whispers in the fog, not words, but syllables shaped by longing and memory. A language older than the town, older than the harbor itself. A sudden gust of wind will often scatter the mist, revealing glimpses of figures standing perfectly still, watching, waiting. Then the fog returns, swallowing them, leaving only the hum of water against pilings and the faint glow of the orbs drifting silently toward the other side. Photographers and paranormal enthusiasts have attempted to capture the phenomena for decades, setting up long exposures, night vision cameras, and thermal imaging equipment. Some claim to have captured faint lights dancing across the bridge in ways that no lantern could explain. Others have images showing ghostly silhouettes of men and women standing at the railings, their forms transparent, their faces unreadable, yet somehow unmistakably human. Even video recordings occasionally pick up audio anomalies, soft footsteps pacing along the planks, whispers carried by the wind, and the unmistakable rush of waves colliding with unseen holes. Despite the fear it inspires, the bridge also draws a sense of solemn awe. Locals and visitors alike describe an overwhelming feeling of connection to the past. The bridge becomes a silent memorial to the many lives claimed by the harbor, a reminder of the town's dependence on the sea and the sacrifices made by those who worked it. The orbs, the mist, and the shadowy figures are not malevolent, but persistent, a quiet insistence that the dead have a place here and that the living should respect it. The Fairhaven Bridge is, in every sense, a crossing not just of water, but of time and memory. It holds the stories of the lost, the grief of those left behind, and the haunting beauty of a community shaped by its harbor. On foggy nights, when the world is quiet and the mist thick, the bridge glows softly with the presence of its silence. Passengers reminding all who pass that some souls never find their way home, and some paths once taken are forever walked again. The Greenfield Bridge stretches across a narrow river, its steel beams and concrete supports dull in the daylight, but carrying an aura of dread when the sun dips below the horizon. By day, it is a quiet crossing, a mundane path for commuters and local travelers. But as night falls, the bridge transforms, becoming a place steeped in tragedy and whispered legends. Over the decades, it has earned a reputation among locals as a site where accidents are frequent, and more than one life has been claimed by its unforgiving span. Yet the most enduring tale is not of wreckage or misfortune, it is of the vanishing hitchhiker. A young woman whose presence has haunted the bridge for generations. Drivers who venture across the Greenfield Bridge after dark often report a strange figure standing by the shoulder. At first, she appears faintly, shrouded in mist and the shadows of the guardrails. She is described as wearing a tattered dress, soaked from the river's mist or perhaps from some unknown past trauma. Her hair clings to her face in wet strands, and her eyes, when they meet yours, hold a mixture of sadness and silent pleading. She does not speak at first, merely waits, shifting her weight from one foot to the other, as if counting the moments. The tale always begins with the act of kindness. A driver slows down, offering a lift to the lonely figure. She does not demand it, does not call out, but her presence alone inspires a deep, instinctive compassion. When the door opens, she climbs in silently, settling into the seat without a word. At this moment, the air changes. The interior of the car feels cooler, almost damp, and the faint scent of rainwater mingles with an inexplicable perfume, something floral, yet sharp, lingering, and impossible to trace. It is a delicate reminder that she is not part of the living world, that her existence straddles the line between here and somewhere else entirely. The true terror, however, comes when the driver reaches the midpoint of the bridge. The young woman smiles faintly, an expression that is at once inviting and melancholy. Then, as the tires hum over the steel grates, she begins to vanish. Slowly at first, the edges of her form blur, fading like mist under the morning sun. Within moments, she is gone completely. The seat is empty, the air carries only her faint scent, and the radio or phone clock shows no passage of time beyond the normal journey. Some drivers describe an almost tactile sensation, as if a cold hand had briefly rested on their shoulder, or a brush of wind swept through the car. The last whisper of her presence. Local lore attempts to explain her story. Some say she is the spirit of a young woman who perished on the bridge decades ago. Others believe she was a runaway bride or a young girl fleeing from something unspeakable, caught forever in a liminal space between her escape and the river below. Whatever the truth, the pattern is consistent. She appears alone. She accepts kindness, and she vanishes before the journey is complete. Many who have encountered her claim a profound sense of sorrow, a reminder that some stories are unfinished and some spirits cannot move on until they are remembered. Those who pass the bridge regularly describe other odd phenomena as well. Streetlights flicker intermittently, casting long, wavering shadows across the asphalt. The river below, calm by day, seems to shimmer with unseen movement at night, as if ripples are forming without wind. Some hear faint footsteps on the wooden boards beneath the guardrails, echoing in time with the faint rustle of leaves and the hum of passing vehicles. Others report hearing whispers, fragments of conversations, soft sighs, and an almost melodic laugh that cuts through the night air. The bridge, it seems, carries the echoes of its tragic history, layering each new experience onto a foundation of fear and fascination. Over time, the Greenfield Bridge has become a destination for ghost hunters and curious travelers. Some come with cameras, hoping to capture the fleeting figure on film, while others come simply to experience the strange chill and eerie ambience for themselves. A few claim to have seen her clearly in the rearview mirror just before she vanished, her expression frozen between hope and sorrow. Others describe the sensation of being watched, a presence that follows silently for the length of the bridge, never intrusive, but impossible to ignore. Every encounter reinforces the legend. She is real to those who see her, and her story persists in the collective memory of the town. Yet, despite the fear she inspires, there is also a strange tenderness to the vanishing hitchhiker. She is not malevolent. She does not lash out or demand payment for attention. She is a silent reminder of fragility and loss, a spectral figure that invites compassion in the dead of night. Drivers who encounter her often speak of the experience as haunting but also strangely moving. A fleeting connection to someone who has lived on, died beyond their reach. The Sudbury Aqueduct Bridge in Framingham is a narrow, steel structure spanning the dark waters below. By day, it is quiet and unremarkable, a relic of a century-old water system, functional but easily overlooked. Commuters and local walkers cross it without a second thought, taking in the view of the river and the surrounding trees. But when night falls, the bridge becomes something entirely different. Its metal grates groan under weight that isn't there, and the air seems to thicken with a cold, heavy presence. Locals whisper that the bridge is haunted, a place where past and present intersect in the eerie stillness of a rainy evening. The story begins with the tale of a maintenance worker named Thomas Harlow. Decades ago, he worked on the aqueduct, climbing its steel beams during storms to inspect the old water system. On one particularly dark and stormy night, Thomas was caught in a sudden downpour. The metal beneath his boots was slick with rain, and the wind howled through the narrow gaps, carrying the roar of the river far below. Witnesses say he slipped while reaching for a railing and fell, vanishing into the dark waters. Despite searches, his body was never recovered. Some say the river refused to give him back, holding him suspended between life and death. Since that night, the Sudbury Aqueduct Bridge has been a place of quiet terror. Walkers crossing late after dark often report hearing footsteps ahead of them, crunching and clanging against the metal grates. The sound comes and goes, sometimes approaching, sometimes retreating, yet no one is ever seen. A chill runs down the spine of anyone who stops to look over the railing, the dark water reflecting only shadows, but never the figure making the sound. The footsteps are deliberate, patient, as if someone is retracing steps from decades ago, forever trapped on the bridge in their final moments. On rainy nights, when the mist hangs low over the river, the legend takes on a more vivid life. Witnesses describe a faint light moving along the bridge, bobbing through the fog as if held by an invisible hand. It resembles a flashlight, swinging in wide arcs, cutting through the rain like a lantern searching for a path. Many who have seen it say, the light appears to be searching for something, or someone climbing the grates as though trying to find a way back to the safety of the walkway. The beam flickers and hesitates at the gaps in the metal, then disappears just as suddenly as it appeared, leaving observers drenched and uneasy. The bridge itself seems to respond to the presence of this ghostly worker. Rainwater pooled on the metal surface glints unnaturally in the flashlight's beam, and the sound of dripping water sometimes mimics the rhythm of footsteps. Locals swear that if they pause mid-crossing, the echoes of clanging metal come closer, surrounding them in a chorus of past and present. Some claim to have felt a brief, cold touch on their shoulder, like a warning or an invitation, only to turn around and find the walkway empty. Even the wind seems to carry a sense of purpose here, guiding, warning, and whispering in a voice that is only half heard, half imagined. Over the years, ghost hunters and thrill seekers have been drawn to the Sudbury Aqueduct Bridge, hoping to capture evidence of Thomas Harlow's spirit. EVP recordings occasionally pick up faint metallic clangs, footsteps that do not match anyone present, or even muffled calls that could be mistaken for a worker shouting across the water. Cameras mounted along the walkway sometimes catch fleeting glimmers of a light that seems to hover just above the grates, moving in patterns no human could reproduce. Some enthusiasts swear they have glimpsed a figure in old work clothes, hunched over and holding an invisible flashlight, moving steadily along the bridge as though performing the maintenance that cost him his life. Despite the fascination, locals caution against crossing the bridge after dark, especially during storms. The narrow pathway and metal surface are treacherous, but there is also a lingering sense that something watches, unseen but intent. Visitors report a feeling of being followed, the hair on their necks prickling as if invisible eyes trace their every movement. Some have left offerings, small candles or coins on the bridge, believing that appeasing Thomas Harlow's restless spirit might bring a safe crossing. Others simply drive past, glancing toward the bridge with unease, sensing the stories are more than superstition. What makes the Sudbury Aqueduct Bridge especially haunting is its dual nature. By day, it is a simple, functional bridge, a link in the water system, and a pathway across the river. By night, particularly when rain and mist roll in, it transforms into a liminal space where past tragedy lingers, where footsteps echo endlessly, and where the faint glow of a flashlight serves as a reminder that not all who die find peace. Thomas Harlow's presence remains patient, almost methodical, retracing the steps he could not complete, searching the bridge for the life that was cut short. The Byram Bridge in Alford sits quietly over a narrow stretch of water, its weathered planks and rusting guardrails belying a dark history. By day, the bridge is unremarkable, a simple crossing for commuters and farmers transporting goods along the country roads. But at night, especially on foggy evenings, the bridge takes on an unsettling aura. Locals speak of it in hushed tones, warning visitors that this is a place where time seems to shift, and the past refuses to stay buried. The legend of the Byram Bridge begins in the 1940s. One rainy afternoon, A school bus carrying a group of children lost traction on the slick roadway above the bridge. Eyewitness accounts from the time describe the vehicle skidding off the bridge and plunging into the river below. The river, calm and silent during most days, suddenly became a scene of chaos, with water churning as the bus was swept downstream. Despite desperate rescue attempts, many children did not survive the accident. The town was left reeling from the tragedy, and whispers began to circulate that the river, the bridge, and the surrounding woods had absorbed the sorrow of those lost. Since that day, the Biram Bridge has carried an almost supernatural reputation. Drivers recount stories of engines stalling for no apparent reason while crossing, radios and car electronics suddenly die, screens blacking out in the middle of a song or conversation, cell phones lose all signal, messages unsent, calls disconnected. Many locals believe these are not malfunctions but signs that the bridge itself is aware of the living crossing it, and that the spirits of the children are drawing attention to themselves. The interruptions always come in the middle of a quiet night, when fog blankets the river, and the faint creak of the bridge boards seems amplified in the still air. Even more chilling are the sounds that people report. As vehicles creep slowly across, some hear the unmistakable noise of crying children. Soft at first, and growing in intensity, as if approaching from beneath the planks. The sobs echo in strange patterns, bouncing off the river and the low stone walls that line the bank. Pedestrians walking the bridge late at night speak of sudden gusts of cold air followed by whispering voices, giggles that quickly turn to wails, and the sound of small feet running. Along the boards, where no one could possibly be, some claim to have seen shadowy figures moving in the mist, tiny shapes darting from one side to the other before dissolving into fog. Ghost hunters and thrill seekers have flocked to the Biram Bridge over the years, hoping to capture proof of the hauntings. Many report recording EVP electronic voice phenomena where faint, childlike whispers emerge from otherwise silent recording. Cameras sometimes catch orbs of light hovering just above the water, or dark, humanoid shapes flickering in the peripheral edges of the frame. Even seasoned investigators describe a sense of being watched, as if invisible eyes are tracking every step, every movement. Some have left toys or flowers along the railing. Small offerings meant to honor the children and perhaps appease the spirits that linger. The bridge itself seems almost sentient. Drivers and pedestrians report that the temperature drops sharply when the spirits make their presence known. Chills creeping down the spine even when wrapped in warm clothing. The planks underfoot groan and shake. Yet no wind or movement from vehicles accounts for the motion. Some who have paused in the center of the bridge say they can feel a vibration under their feet, rhythmic and steady, as if footsteps are pacing beneath the boards. The sensation grows stronger when the fog is thick, heightening the feeling that something unseen is pacing, circling, waiting. Despite its quiet appearance during the day, the Biram Bridge demands respect at night. Residents warn that crossing it alone is risky, not necessarily in a physical sense, but in the sense of encountering the unresolved sorrow that has lingered for nearly a century. Some say that if you stop too long on the bridge, the crying grows louder, more insistent, until you feel a hand or several brushing against your legs or shoulders. Those who have looked over the railing report seeing ripples in the water where nothing touches it, shapes moving just beneath the surface, as if the children are still trying to escape. Over time, the Biram Bridge has become a symbol of grief suspended in place, a crossing not just over water, but between the living and the dead. The river below, dark and reflective, mirrors the unresolved anguish of that tragic day in the 1940s. Even as cars pass and life continues on the country road, the spirits remain, caught in a loop of terror and loss. They cry, they reach, and they whisper, reminding every passerby that the past never truly disappears. The Cambridge Street Bridge in Worcester is not the kind of bridge that blends into the background. By day, it serves its mundane purpose, carrying cars and pedestrians over the steel and concrete divide. But at night, the bridge transforms into something almost sentient, a place where the living sense the lingering weight of the past. Locals speak of it with a mixture of awe and fear, cautioning that crossing after dark is not simply a matter of getting from one side to the other. It is a confrontation with something unseen, something that remembers. People who walk across the bridge after sunset report an unsettling sensation, as if the structure itself is breathing beneath their feet. The vibrations are subtle at first, almost like a low hum, but they grow stronger as you reach the center. Some describe them as pulses, heavy and rhythmic, as though the bridge has absorbed the memory of long-forgotten events and now carries them in its very bones. The feeling is accompanied by a pressure in the chest, a sense that something massive lies just beneath the roadway, hidden from view but aware of every step. The noises are equally disconcerting. Steel beams creak and groan in ways that defy natural explanation. Loud bangs echo from the supports, startling anyone who expects the quiet of the night. Some nights, the sounds resemble footsteps moving along the undersides of the bridge, pacing back and forth with deliberate intent. Urban explorers and curious thrill seekers who venture onto the bridge with cameras and recording devices often capture more than just mechanical noises. Shadows shift between the beams, shapes that do not belong to any known object. Occasionally, a figure can be glimpsed out of the corner of the eye, a silhouette suspended between the beams, vanishing when looked at directly. Perhaps the most disturbing phenomenon is the voice. A faint, trembling male voice seems to emerge from the structure itself, saying a single line over and over. It wasn't supposed to happen. The words are chilling, a plea or a lament carried through the night air. Witnesses cannot tell if the voice belongs to someone long dead or if it is an echo of regret somehow etched into the steel and concrete. Some suggest the bridge is haunted by a man who perished during its construction, or perhaps someone involved in a tragedy near the river. Others think it is a collective manifestation, a lingering guilt embedded in the very materials of the bridge. The bridge has a long history. Built in the early 20th century, it was part of Worcester's industrial expansion, carrying workers, goods, and machinery across the river. Records from the period hint at construction accidents, injuries, and even fatalities, though the details are sketchy. Local lore tells of a worker who fell from the beams into the river below, his screams unheard amid the clangor of construction. Some believe the vibrations felt today are the residual energy of his struggle, the weight of a life abruptly ended, reverberating through the metal. Others say it is the bridge itself, a living memory of all the tension, labor, and loss it has borne for over a century. Visitors report additional anomalies. Flashlights flicker or fail entirely, phones lose signal, and cameras capture streaks of light that have no source. Some who stop at the midpoint of the bridge swear they feel a hand brushing against their shoulder, though no one else is present. The more time you spend there, the more the sensations intensify the low vibrations. The metallic groans, the whispers from beneath the beams. Urban explorers who linger too long often report headaches, dizziness, and a creeping sense of dread, as if the bridge itself is judging them, questioning their intrusion. Even routine traffic can become eerie. Drivers crossing the bridge at night have described cars suddenly slowing for no reason, tires seeming to stick against invisible resistance. Pedestrians sometimes notice shadows moving across the roadway, figures that vanish when approached, leaving only the faint sound of breath or the metallic echo of steps. In the fog, these phenomena are amplified, creating an environment where reality itself feels distorted. The Cambridge Street Bridge is more than steel and concrete. It is a monument to memory, sorrow, and perhaps regret. Its vibrations, bangs, and groans are not just mechanical. They are reminders that the past lingers. The shadows and whispered words are messages from something trapped between time and space, a presence that refuses to fade. Those who cross it after dark do so at their own risk, stepping into a space where the boundary between living and dead feels thinner than the steel beneath their feet. Walking across the bridge is an experience that lingers long after you've left. The echoes of the voice, the rhythmic tremors, and the shifting shadows imprint themselves on memory. Even during the day, locals cannot shake the feeling that the bridge watches, remembers, and waits. The Cambridge Street Bridge is not merely a path from one side of the river to the other. It is a crossing into history, a threshold where human curiosity meets the restless presence of what was never meant to be forgotten. The Westfield River Bridge in Huntington is an unassuming structure by day. Its weathered stone arches and iron railings blend seamlessly with the rolling hills and the gentle current of the river below. But as the sun sets and darkness creeps across the landscape, the bridge transforms from a quiet crossing into a stage for one of the most enduring legends in western Massachusetts. Locals speak of it in hushed tones, warning travelers that this is no ordinary river bridge, that the dead or something far darker linger here, forever retracing the steps of those who have passed before them. The story begins in the early 1900s, when horse-drawn carriages were the primary mode of transport and funerals followed strict, somber protocols. It is said that a wealthy family lost a patriarch under mysterious circumstances, and the funeral procession crossed this very bridge at midnight. Witnesses from that time described a hearse unlike any they had seen, black as the midnight sky, drawn by two spectral horses with eyes that glowed faintly in the moonlight. The driver wore a long coat and wide-brimmed hat, his face obscured by shadow, yet his presence radiated authority and menace. From that night onward, locals whispered that the bridge was cursed, a conduit where the living and the dead meet in a place neither world can fully claim. For those brave or foolish enough to cross the Westfield River Bridge at midnight, the first signs are subtle. The air grows heavier, carrying the faint smell of wet earth and horse sweat, a chill that seems to seep into the bones. Travelers often report hearing a distant rumble, a sound that does not belong to the river or the wind, the unmistakable clatter of iron-rimmed wheels on stone. It starts quietly, a soft tapping that gradually intensifies until it vibrates through the car, the feet, and even the chest of anyone on the bridge. Those who are unfamiliar with the legend sometimes mistake it for a delivery cart or an old truck. But the sound carries a rhythm, deliberate and measured, that sets the heart racing. The next phase of the experience is far more unnerving. Many who hear the wheels report that their lights flicker or go out entirely. Some describe it as an outline at first, the shape forming from the darkness, like smoke condensing into matter. Others claim the horses come first, their hooves striking the stone in perfect cadence, followed by the black carriage, and finally the driver, motionless yet all-seeing. The driver's presence is perhaps the most terrifying aspect. Witnesses say he remains silent at first, but a glance from him is enough to freeze a person in place. His eyes, sometimes glimpsed as glowing amber, pierce through the darkness, seeming to peer not just at the body, but at the very soul of anyone on the bridge. There is an understanding in that gaze, a promise or threat that is impossible to articulate. According to legend, if a traveler does not pull over and switch off their lights immediately, the hearse will come to a halt beside the car. The driver then extends an invitation, a wordless gesture of the hand, offering a ride that no one has ever returned from. The stories of those who have had encounters are chilling and varied. Some claim to have seen the carriage drift alongside their vehicle for several minutes, only to vanish when they reach the far side of the bridge. Others insist that the horses leaned close, their spectral breath fogging the windshield, their eyes reflecting centuries of sorrow and death. A few tell of the faint tolling of a bell, though no bell exists on the bridge, and the mournful cadence of a funeral march carried through the wind. Even those who only drive by the bridge slowly after dark report an overwhelming sensation of being watched, a certainty that the driver's eyes are following them long after they have crossed. Locals add their own rules to surviving the encounter. Lights must be turned off, the engine must be cut, and the foot taken from the brake and gas pedals. Some even hold their breath as the rumble of wheels grows nearer, insisting that even a whisper or a gasp could draw the driver's attention. Folk wisdom suggests that the hearse is a spirit not merely bound to the bridge but to the souls who are careless. Those who travel with fear or curiosity, those who approach it respectfully, with caution, sometimes report nothing more than a fleeting shadow and the clatter of receding wheels. Even in the daylight, the bridge carries an aura that is hard to describe. Its stonework feels colder than necessary, its arches heavier than their construction warrants. Visitors sometimes report a feeling of eyes upon them, a sense of being counted, judged, or measured. Local children dare each other to run across during the day, and even then, many refuse to look back, convinced that something follows them in the periphery of their vision. The Westfield River Bridge is more than just a crossing over water. It is a threshold, a place where the boundary between life and death, curiosity and caution, thins under the moonlight. The story of the horse-drawn hearse has survived generations because it resonates with a primal fear, the fear of being taken, the fear of the unknown, and the understanding that some places are not meant for the living to tread freely. The Linfells Parkway Bridge in Melrose seems ordinary by daylight. Its concrete arches stretch across a shallow valley, flanked by trees and low shrubbery, carrying the constant hum of traffic. To passers-by, it is simply a convenient crossing, a mundane part of the daily commute. But as night falls, the bridge takes on a far more sinister presence. Locals speak of it with unease, and even police officers tread lightly when called to investigate reports from frightened drivers. Something about the bridge bends reality, and those who experience it never forget. It begins subtly. A driver crossing the Linfells Parkway after dark might feel a sudden chill, inexplicable in the mild Massachusetts evening. Sometimes, the faint crunch of footsteps follows them across the concrete deck. The sound is deliberate and measured, matching no pedestrian pace, echoing unnaturally, sometimes from the side rails, sometimes from beneath the bridge itself. The noises seem to move with the vehicle, growing louder as if someone or something is keeping pace. And yet, when drivers slow or stop, peering nervously into the darkness, the footsteps vanish entirely. There is no one there. Reports from police are numerous and consistent. Dozens of calls have come in over the years from motorists insisting that a man stands in the middle of the bridge, unmoving, blocking the road. Lights flash, brakes screech, and hearts race. But by the time officers arrive, the bridge is empty. No footprints mark the asphalt. No figure is visible under the streetlights. The callers swear they saw him clearly, sometimes in casual clothing, sometimes in a suit that seems out of another decade. The consistency of these reports has led to a local legend that the bridge is more than concrete. Instead, it is a liminal space, a threshold where reality frays and the impossible becomes tangible. Psychics and paranormal researchers have weighed in, attempting to explain the phenomenon. Many insist that the Linfells Parkway Bridge is a portal, a point where multiple timelines converge. The man who appears in the center of the bridge, they claim, may belong to a different era, someone crossing in a reality that existed decades or even centuries before. Others suggest that the whispers people hear are fragments of conversations from alternate lives, echoes of decisions that were made differently elsewhere. Those sensitive to such energies report a tingling in the chest, a pull toward the railings, as if the bridge itself is aware of who steps upon it. Motorists recount the strangest occurrences when the bridge is empty yet alive with activity. Car doors click shut on their own, mirrors fog without reason, and faint murmurs rise from beneath the underpass. Some have reported the sensation of being watched, of eyes tracking their every movement. Though the bridge is empty except for the vehicle, on rare occasions, drivers glimpse something in their rearview mirror, a shadowy figure that seems to linger just beyond the line of headlights, visible for a heartbeat before it evaporates into darkness. Even those who walk across the bridge on foot have unnerving experiences. Teenagers daring each other to cross after dusk speak of whispers that call their names, gentle at first and then insistent, as if the bridge itself is aware of their presence. Some claim that standing still at the center of the bridge brings visions, flashes of alternate lives, choices never made, or even glimpses of tragic accidents that never occurred in their own timeline. The effect is disorienting, leaving witnesses unsure if what they experienced was real or a trick of the mind. Locals have devised informal rules for surviving an encounter. Do not stop on the bridge. Do not make direct eye contact with figures that appear. Keep moving and avoid lingering. Those who attempt to interact, to speak or approach the apparition, sometimes report feelings of vertigo, cold hands brushing their skin, or pressure on the chest, as if the bridge itself resists intrusion into its spectral domain. Some paranormal enthusiasts have installed cameras, hoping to capture evidence. Footage often shows fleeting shadows or brief distortions of light, but nothing conclusive. EVP sessions sometimes pick up soft whispers, though words cannot always be deciphered. In many cases, the energy of the bridge is so strong that equipment fails entirely. Phones die, GPS malfunctions, and flashlights flicker erratically. It is as if the bridge rejects the devices meant to observe it. Despite these warnings, the bridge remains a part of daily life. Drivers cross it unaware, pedestrians stroll along it, and yet, for those who have experienced its hauntings, the Linfels Parkway Bridge is never the same again. It is more than concrete and steel. It is a place where the living brush against other realities, where the line between past and present blurs, and where one can feel the weight of countless footsteps echoing through time. The Charles River Footbridge in Boston is one of the city's most charming sights by daylight. Couples stroll hand in hand, joggers cross with headphones in, and the sunlight dances across the water below. Its iron rails and wooden planks make it a favorite spot for photographers, and the view of the river reflecting the skyline is undeniably romantic. But once darkness falls, the bridge transforms. The atmosphere changes, heavy and oppressive, as if the very air remembers tragedies that no one alive witnessed. Runners who cross the footbridge late at night often report an uncanny feeling of being watched. At first, it is subtler, prickling on the back of the neck, the sense that the shadows are moving just beyond sight. Then comes the sound, faint tinkling music, as though a music box is playing somewhere nearby. The melody is always soft, almost drowned by the wind, yet clear enough to make the hairs on the back of your neck stand on end. Joggers stop, looking around, but the bridge is empty. No street lamps, no benches, no one at all. And yet the music continues, drifting just out of reach. On nights when the fog rolls in from the river, the hauntings intensify. Witnesses have described a woman in white appearing at the far end of the bridge. She is pale, almost translucent, her gown clinging to her form as though soaked by river water. Her hair is plastered to her face, and in her hands she clutches a bouquet of flowers that never seem to wilt. No matter how long she lingers, she walks slowly, deliberately, along the wooden planks, her gaze fixed on the river below, or sometimes on the darkened path ahead. When approached, she does not acknowledge the living. She simply drifts out of reach, vanishing into the mist, only to reappear moments later, a few feet away, continuing her endless walk. Legend says she is a bride abandoned at the altar decades ago. Her heartbroken despair drove her to the Charles River, where she walked into the freezing waters and drowned. Locals swear that she now haunts the bridge, replaying her sorrow, carrying the symbols of a love that never was. The flowers she carries are never fresh, never dead. They exist only as a reminder of her heartbreak, a permanent, spectral bouquet tethering her to the living world. Those who encounter her often speak of a sudden drop in temperature, a chill that seems to seep into their bones. Sometimes, the music stops abruptly, leaving an eerie silence that amplifies the sound of footsteps on the wooden planks. Some visitors have even reported feeling a hand brush against their shoulder, only to turn and see the bridge completely empty. Others describe a pressure in the chest, an invisible weight, as if the ghostly bride is walking too close, her grief palpable, pressing against anyone who dares to enter her domain. Joggers and pedestrians alike have reported seeing other anomalies. The reflections in the river sometimes distort unnaturally, showing fleeting images of figures that vanish before they can be identified. Shadows cross a path where none should exist, and lights from the distant city glimmer strangely, like they are refracted through another time. Some claim they have heard whispered phrases carried on the wind. Words like wait or forgive me, as if the bride's sorrowful voice reaches across decades. Desperate for acknowledgement, even those who walk the bridge during the day sometimes feel the subtle residue of her presence. Some claim to see a flicker in their peripheral vision, the quick, ghostly white of a gown, or the hint of flowers clutched in a spectral hand. Birds sometimes scatter without warning, and the air occasionally takes on a damp, heavy quality, like the scent of the river after a storm. These fleeting moments are easily dismissed in the light of day, but come nightfall, they are unmistakable, part of a larger pattern of haunting that has persisted for generations. Paranormal investigators have attempted to document the activity on the Charles River footbridge. Cameras capture fleeting shadows, EVP recordings catch faint tinkling of music boxes and soft, almost imperceptible sobs. Thermographic imaging shows sudden cold spots that seem to move along the bridge. Theories abound, ranging from residual energy codes of her trauma imprinted on the wood and iron to the idea that the bridge itself is a liminal space where the veil between the living and the dead is thinner than anywhere else in Boston. Locals have learned to respect the bridge after dark. They avoid it when the fog is thick, when the wind carries the faintest whisper, or when the temperature suddenly drops. Those who insist on crossing anyway are often warned to keep moving, to avoid looking directly at the woman in white, and to never reach out toward her. Those who ignore the warnings sometimes return shaken, unable to articulate exactly what they felt, only that it was real, that it was sorrow, that it was relentless. The Miller's Falls Bridge in Montague is unassuming by day, a simple span over the Connecticut River, lined with steel guardrails that have weathered decades of wind and rain. Drivers pass it without a second thought, pedestrians cross it for the view of the river below, and cyclists treat it as a shortcut on their routes. But come nightfall, the bridge takes on a far more sinister presence. It seems to thrum with an energy all its own, an invisible vibration that prickles the skin and sets hearts racing. Locals often talk about the scraping sound first. At first, it is subtle, like metal dragging across the rails, faint enough to be dismissed as a loose piece of debris or a vehicle tire grinding over the bridge's surface. But as the night deepens, the sound intensifies, echoing across the structure with a haunting rhythm. Pedestrians have described it as a slow, deliberate scraping, punctuated by sudden, sharp screeches that seem to come from nowhere, as though something immense is trying to claw its way across the steel. The sound has a way of following you, lingering in your ears long after you have left the bridge. The origin of the haunting is whispered about with grave seriousness. A train derailment that happened decades ago. One stormy night, a freight train carrying passengers and cargo derailed near the riverbank, the twisted wreckage leaving dozens dead or severely injured. Survivors speak of the chaos, of screams carried over the river, of the final cries that faded into the night. Since that tragic accident, the bridge has borne witness to an unusual number of strange occurrences. Some say the metal itself remembers the impact, that the scraping and groaning of the rails are echoes of the trains that no longer run. A recording of trauma played over and over in the darkness. Drivers crossing the bridge after midnight report strange visual phenomena. Headlights flicker, as if another car has suddenly appeared in the lane beside them. They slow, heart pounding, expecting to see a vehicle, only to find the road empty. Sometimes, when they glance back in the rearview mirror, the phantom lights seem to follow them for a moment before vanishing altogether, leaving an unsettling certainty that something invisible is riding along the bridge with them. Witnesses swear the apparition is not a trick of the eyes. The effect is too deliberate, too persistent. Pedestrians are not spared either. Those who venture across the bridge late at night have reported sudden drops in temperature, cold that seeps into the bones, and the sense of being watched. Some describe seeing a shadow moving beneath the guardrails, a form that is human yet impossibly tall, stretched by the dark. Others hear faint cries for help, distorted and carried by the wind, whispers of voices from the past asking for acknowledgement, for remembrance, for release. Some paranormal investigators have attempted to document the bridge's eerie activity. Recordings have captured unexplained screeches and metallic dragging noises, amplified under the night sky. Thermal cameras pick up cold patches along the bridge's surface, shifting in a way that defies natural explanation. Motion sensors trigger alarms without cause, and occasional reflections in the river below show fleeting, unidentifiable shapes that vanish the moment anyone looks directly at them. The river itself seems to hold the memories of the disaster. On foggy nights, it reflects not just a bridge but flickers of motion, ghostly trains crossing the steel tracks, lights from carriages that no longer exist, and figures of passengers caught in the final moments before the crash. Locals avoid the bridge on such nights, sensing that the boundary between the living and the dead is thinner when the fog hangs low, and that the bridge is not merely a crossing but a stage where tragedy continues to play out. Stories of encounters abound. One driver recalled seeing a figure in a dark uniform standing at the center of the bridge, illuminated by his high beams. The figure raised an arm, as if signaling, then disappeared into thin air. A cyclist recounted the scraping sound suddenly rising behind her, faster now, like metal being dragged in a frantic rush. Yet, when she stopped and turned, no one was there. Even police patrols sometimes hear the noises while their cars sit idle, shaking their heads at the inexplicable sounds echoing off the steel. The Miller's Falls Bridge has become a test of nerve for the brave or the foolhardy. Locals know to cross quickly, to avoid lingering after dark, and to keep their eyes forward. Some whisper that the bridge will release its spirits only when the memories of that terrible night are acknowledged, when the cries of the dead are no longer ignored. Until then, the scraping, the flickering lights, and the ghostly presences remain. The Essex Street Bridge in Lawrence, Massachusetts, appears ordinary enough during the day, a simple span over a calm river, connecting streets lined with old brick buildings. Yet, after nightfall, the bridge takes on an entirely different presence. Locals whisper that it is haunted, that the water beneath carries the echoes of tragedy, and that those who dare to cross alone may encounter more than just the chill of evening air. Decades ago, a young boy was swept away by the river during a stormy night. The currents claimed him before anyone could react, leaving the town grieving, and the boy's body never recovered. Since that night, people report strange occurrences on the bridge, especially when fog rolls in from the river. Drivers notice an unexplainable chill inside their cars. Pedestrians feel the brush of small hands on their shoulders, followed by the faint laughter of a child. The sounds are fleeting yet unsettling, as though someone or something is trying to reach out across time. Those brave enough to linger often hear more than just laughter. Sharp, panicked screams pierce the air, merging with the gurgle of rushing water. Even though the river below flows peacefully, residents describe it as if the boy's final moments are replaying, a loop of fear and helplessness etched into the bridge itself. Some have set up recording devices, hoping to capture evidence of the paranormal. On foggy nights, EVP recorders have picked up faint whispers, repeating the word, "Help me," over and over, mingling with the hum of passing cars and distant traffic. The effect is chilling, a reminder that some tragedies leave a mark that cannot be washed away. There are visual sightings, too. People report glimpsing a small figure standing near the edge of the bridge, drenched and trembling, only to vanish when approached. Sometimes the figure is so fleeting that witnesses question their own eyes. Yet the sense of presence lingers, a quiet, persistent tension that seems to settle over the bridge like a fog that never lifts. Drivers have told of seeing tiny handprints suddenly appear on windshields, only to disappear moments later. Others speak of shadows moving along the riverbank, impossible to track, always just beyond reach. Its haunting is subtle but persistent, an unseen reminder of the boy who never returned and the grief that endures. Locals warn against crossing after dark, though curiosity draws many anyway. Some come for thrills, others to honor the memory of the child. But all leave with a lingering unease, an awareness that the bridge holds memories and voices that refuse to be silenced. The Mystic River Bridge in Medford is a relic of a bygone era, a drawbridge whose ironwork and timber beams have weathered countless storms, tides, and centuries of traffic. By day, it carries commuters, fishermen, and curious pedestrians across the dark, slow-moving waters of the Mystic River. But when the sun sets and fog drifts along the water, the bridge transforms. Its familiar creaks take on a rhythm reminiscent of a ship at sea, and the ordinary sounds of traffic fade into whispers, footsteps, and the soft clanging of chains. Locals have long whispered that the bridge is haunted, and those willing to cross it after midnight often report experiences that defy logic. The most commonly reported phenomenon involves ghostly sailors. People say they appear suddenly along the rails, dressed in tattered naval uniforms of the 18th and 19th centuries. They do not speak, yet their presence is overwhelming, their pale faces etched with exhaustion and longing. Witnesses claim to see them moving with purpose, as though completing a task they can no longer finish in life. Sometimes, these apparitions stand at attention, staring out over the river, while others pace the length of the bridge, inspecting invisible rigging or hauling unseen cargo. The air itself seems different on these nights. Fog thickens around the bridge, hanging low over the river and obscuring the far bank. A faint scent of sea salt and brine drifts through the air, mingling with the rust and decay of the bridge. Pedestrians often remark that the smell is unmistakably maritime, as if the Atlantic itself has shifted inland to brush the bridge with its mist. Chains and ropes are frequently reported moving on their own. Several visitors have said that ropes coiled along the railings twist and shift, sometimes rising and falling as if lifted by invisible hands. One fisherman claimed to see a coil of rope swing like a pendulum, casting long shadows on the planks beneath his feet. Another witness, crossing during a particularly foggy night, swore he saw the bridge's draw mechanisms clank and shudder, even though no cars or pedestrians were present. The metal protesting as though resisting an unseen force. Footsteps are among the most persistent signs of the haunting. Cross the bridge alone after midnight, and you may hear the tap of boots following your pace. Some say the steps never match their own. Sometimes they accelerate, sometimes pause, as if measuring your courage. A few have tried to confront the phenomenon, turning to speak or call out, but the bridge responds only with silence or a sudden gust of wind that rattles the timbers. Those brave enough to step to the railing have occasionally glimpsed figures in the fog below the surface. Pale outlines moving with purpose just beneath the water, as if the river itself conceals a second, hidden deck. Boaters on the Mystic River also tell chilling stories. They recount seeing shadowy sailors aboard phantom vessels moving silently along the water. Lanterns appear to float in the fog, glowing faintly before vanishing when approached. One kayaker described hearing commands barked in low guttural voices, orders he could not understand, yet which filled him with an instinctive sense of dread. The water, usually calm, can suddenly churn as though waves are rising from nowhere, forcing boats to rock violently, as if the spirits are rehearsing maneuvers from some long-forgotten naval engagement. Investigators who have set up cameras and audio recorders on the bridge report unusual phenomena. Video often shows blurred movements along the railings, sometimes resembling figures in period clothing, disappearing when approached. Audio captures faint creaks, groans, and the low hum of voices that are just beyond understanding. Some of the recordings contain the soft lapping of water against hulls, distant whistles, and the sound of rigging straining under invisible winds. Paranormal experts suggest the bridge may be a conduit, a place where the energy of those who perished at sea has been trapped, replaying their final tasks night after night. Local legend adds a deeper layer to the haunting. It is said that long ago, the bridge was a docking point for merchants and sailors carrying goods inland. Several ships wrecked near the river's mouth, claiming their crews and leaving their lives unfinished. The spirits of those lost at sea are thought to have followed the bridge inland, unable to return to the waters they once knew. The ghost sailors are said to maintain the bridge as though it were a vessel, performing endless routines of maritime labor in a realm caught between life and death. Despite the eerie reports, the Mystic River Bridge continues to attract the curious. Urban explorers, ghost hunters, and thrill seekers come armed with cameras, audio devices, and courage, hoping to catch a glimpse of the spectral sailors. Many leave with stories of cold winds brushing their faces, ropes that move without hands, and footsteps pacing just behind them. Some swear they have seen faces peer from the fog, eyes hollow and endless, staring out over the river as if seeking a lost horizon. The Monson twin bridges rise side by side over the quiet waters of the Quaboag River, twin spans that have stood for more than a century. By day, they are unremarkable, steel and concrete stretching across the calm river, carrying commuters, travelers, and locals going about their business. But at night, especially under a heavy fog or the pale glow of a full moon. These twin bridges take on a life of their own. People who cross them after dark tell tales of subtle distortions, of movements and sounds that make the air feel heavy, and of reflections that refuse to behave as they should. The most commonly reported phenomenon involves the mirrored reflections of the bridges themselves. Those who drive or walk across one span sometimes notice their reflection on the opposite bridge behaving oddly, delayed, slightly out of sync, or moving independently. A motorist might glance in the water and see a shadow of themselves raising a hand, only to realize they hadn't moved. Pedestrians report that when they look into the dark river, their reflection smiles, frowns, or tilts its head a second after they've done nothing at all. Locals say that a lagging reflection is a warning. A spirit is watching from beneath the water, a presence that is patient and insistent. The river itself seems complicit in the haunting. On still nights, the water is unnaturally black, reflecting nothing but shadows. Occasionally, small ripples appear, as if something just beneath the surface is testing the boundary between the world of the living and the dead. Some say that these are the spirits of those who drowned in the river decades ago. Unable to cross over, now trapped in the twin mirrors of water and bridge. Swimmers or fishermen at dusk have reported feeling invisible hands brush their ankles, a cold suction that draws upward before vanishing as quickly as it appeared. One story tells of a couple who drove across the North Bridge late one November evening. The fog was thick, headlights barely illuminating the span. As they glanced into the river, the man noticed his reflection waving, but he hadn't moved. Panicked, he reached out to touch the glassy surface from the bridge railing. The reflection hesitated, then tilted its head in a mocking gesture. The couple sped off, their car radio cutting out completely, and claimed to this day that they never saw a single car or pedestrian on the twin bridge behind them, even though it should have been busy at that hour. It isn't just reflections that disturb those who traverse the bridges. Drivers report sudden cold drafts, long after leaving the open air. The metallic framework of the bridges sometimes groans and vibrates as if carrying the weight of invisible feet. Chains, left over from construction or maintenance, have been seen swinging on their own, brushing the steel rails with eerie precision. A few pedestrians claim to hear whispering coming from the river below, voices that speak in a tongue both familiar and unplaceable, murmuring warnings or counting silently. Some urban explorers have tried to document these phenomena. Night after night, cameras and audio recorders are placed on the bridges. Video footage often shows faint, blurry shapes moving along the twin rails, figures that vanish when approached. Audio recordings capture echoes of laughter, sobbing, and distant footsteps that have no visible source. In certain clips, the recorded voices whisper, "We see you," or, more chillingly, "Stay." Paranormal enthusiasts speculate that the twin bridges act as a kind of mirror portal, where the energy of the water below and the iron above trap echoes of the past. Those echoes may be the spirits of people who died in the river, or the unresolved shadows of a town as forgotten tragedies. Locals have stories stretching back generations. In the 1930s, a young boy reportedly fell into the Quaboag River while playing near the bridge. He vanished, and his body was never recovered. Since then, some claim to see a small figure standing on the opposite bridge, watching silently. Others say the spirit is more subtle, appearing in reflections and shifting shadows, waiting to make its presence known only to those who wander too close at night. Over the decades, additional drownings and accidents have reinforced the bridge's reputation. Each incident leaves another layer of restless energy, and the bridges seem to remember every lost soul. Those brave enough to cross both spans in a single night often report the strangest occurrences. The second bridge seems to react to the first. The lag in reflections intensifies. Shadows move faster than they should, and sounds echo in impossible directions. Some pedestrians swear that the bridges themselves are alive, subtly tilting or vibrating to test the resolve of those who walk across. One night, a cyclist noted the reflection of his bike moving ahead of him, as if someone or something was pedaling faster underwater, urging him onward. Despite the stories, the Monson twin bridges remain in daily use. Commuters, tourists, and night travelers cross them unaware or skeptical of their haunted reputation. But those who have experienced the anomalies rarely forget. A reflection that doesn't match, a ripple that has no source, a whisper from the dark river below. These are enough to make the bravest step hesitate. Locals caution that if your reflection lags, you are being watched, a silent presence waiting patiently beneath the waters, counting the moments until it can interact with the living. The way a river bridge in bar is unassuming by daylight, a simple span of steel and wood stretching over the dark waters below. But when the fog rolls in, thick and suffocating, the bridge transforms. Locals whisper of the black carriage, a spectral vehicle that emerges from the mist without warning. It is drawn by horses that seem almost skeletal, their hooves silent on the damp planks, yet leaving no tracks behind. The driver sits upright, motionless, a figure without features, a gray silhouette hidden beneath a wide-brimmed hat. Some say he is death itself, patiently waiting for anyone foolish enough to follow. The first encounters often seem innocuous. Travelers heading home on foggy nights might glimpse the silhouette from the corner of their eyes. A carriage slowly crossing the bridge. The horses' heads appear to bob in rhythm, their breaths forming vapor that mingles with the fog. Motorists who slow down or attempt to watch more closely report a growing unease, a sense that the bridge beneath them is lengthening, stretching into the horizon in impossible ways. The farther they follow, the more distorted the world becomes. Streetlights vanish, familiar landmarks disappear, and even the air feels heavier, thicker, as if suspended between worlds. Those who have survived an encounter describe a surreal journey. One local man recalled leaving bar late at night after visiting relatives. Fog enveloped the road, and he noticed a black carriage on the bridge ahead. Driven by curiosity, or perhaps fear, he followed. At first, it moved slowly, keeping the same distance ahead of his headlights. But the bridge seemed to expand, the planks of wood beneath his tires. Never ending, he glanced down at the river, expecting to see familiar shadows, but only saw a black expanse stretching beyond comprehension. Hours passed or so it felt before the fog began to lift. Dawn's light finally broke through, revealing the bridge had never changed in length. The carriage was gone. Yet he swore the memory of endless crossing stayed with him, as though part of him remained trapped in that spectral loop. The driver of the carriage is the most unsettling element. Witnesses cannot describe a face or even eyes. Some say the figure is a void, a shadow given shape, staring forward in silence. Others claim the hat conceals a pale skull, though it only appears when the fog is thickest. There is no sound of conversation, no gesture or motion, only an oppressive presence that presses against the minds of those who follow. Even seasoned drivers report a creeping sense of doom, a whisper in the air that seems to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Do not stop. Do not turn back. Keep following. Locals have their own theories. Some claim the carriage is cursed, a punishment for wandering too far into the fog. Others insist it is a portal, a remnant of some unfinished event from a century ago, when a wealthy traveler perished on the bridge during a storm. According to the legend, he had attempted to cross in the middle of the night with his carriage and never returned. The next morning, townsfolk reported seeing the fog glowing strangely over the river, and since then, the black carriage appears whenever the weather mirrors that night. The phenomenon is not limited to drivers. Pedestrians report seeing the carriage from the bridge railings, even when no one else is on the bridge. One late-night walker described the fog thickening suddenly around her, the black shape appearing silently in the mist. As she tried to move backward, the bridge seemed to shift, stretching her view in impossible directions. The carriage moved ahead, slower than her steps, yet impossible to catch. She felt hours pass in what could have been minutes. The bridge elongating under her, as if the world itself had folded around the spectral vehicle. When the fog finally lifted, she found herself near the starting point, the experience leaving her shaken and disoriented. Some locals refuse to drive over the bridge at night altogether, especially when the weather is damp or foggy. Others claim that even glancing at the bridge from a distance during thick fog is enough to invite the apparition. Stories accumulate, each witness adding subtle variations. The way the carriage's lanterns glow with a cold light, the soundless tapping of horseshoes, the sensation that the bridge itself is guiding your path. Each story, however, carries the same warning: follow at your own peril. For the bridge stretches beyond the rules of time and space, and the driver waits for the unwary. Urban explorers and paranormal investigators have tried to document the phenomena. Cameras capture faint shapes moving through the fog, often appearing distorted and elongated. Audio equipment occasionally records low, mournful creaks or the sound of hooves in rhythm, with no movement above ground. Those who have attempted to map the bridge during these events report the impossibility of measurement. The planks seem infinite, the river below unreachable. It is as if the bridge becomes a liminal space, a threshold between the living world and the spectral. The Deerfield Bridge in Massachusetts is a quiet, unassuming crossing by day, spanning the river with simple stone arches and worn wooden railings. But as night falls, the bridge's atmosphere shifts. Locals call it a place where history refuses to stay buried, where the echoes of the past ripple across the water and up into the fog. Travelers walking here after dark report a heavy, oppressive feeling, as though the air itself remembers the horrors that once took place. The bridge is said to be haunted by the events of the 1704 raid, when settlers in Deerfield were attacked during a violent conflict. Families fled in terror, and many were killed in the chaos. The bridge became a silent witness to the massacre, a crossing that carried the cries of the wounded and the footsteps of those who would never return home. Even centuries later, some say the bridge has not forgotten. Visitors describe hearing the sounds of battle at night, shouts, musket fire, and the clatter of running feet. The echoes are sudden and intense, only to vanish as quickly as they appear, leaving an eerie silence in their wake. Those who linger sometimes detect the faint smell of gunpowder mixed with earth and river water, a ghostly reminder of the violence that once stained the ground. Footsteps seem to follow travelers along the span, though when they look behind them, there is no one there. Shadows flicker at the edges of vision, moving with unnatural purpose. Locals speak of hearing the cries of children and the wails of mothers, layered over the sounds of clashing swords and shouted commands. Some claim that if you stop in the middle of the bridge, the air grows colder, and the river below seems to pulse with unseen energy. A sudden gust of wind might carry the sound of whispers, murmurs in languages long forgotten, echoing the voices of those who died during the raid. It is as if the bridge itself is alive with memory, replaying the horrors of the past for anyone willing or unlucky enough to notice. Despite the chilling accounts, some are drawn to the Deerfield Bridge, hoping to experience a connection to history or to catch a glimpse of the spectral echoes that linger. Others come to pay respect to the lives lost, leaving small tokens or lighting candles at the bridge's edge. Regardless of intent, all who cross after dark sense a presence that is impossible to ignore. The bridge seems to watch, to remember, and to whisper the stories of its past to anyone who will listen. The Taunton River Bridge, a modest span of steel and concrete, seems ordinary by daylight, stretching across the calm waters of the Taunton River. Yet locals know that beneath the ordinary lies a story, drenched in violence and fear, one that refuses to stay buried. Long ago, during a time when law was often personal and justice brutal, a drifter wandered into Taunton, accused of crimes, both real and imagined. He was seized by an angry mob. The bridge, then little more than a wooden crossing, became the stage for his execution. They hanged him there, and his body swayed above the dark waters, a grim warning to others. The details of his death were whispered for years, carried along the riverbanks, and the bridge earned a name that would linger for centuries: the Bridge of the Hanged Man. Over the decades, the bridge was rebuilt, modernized with steel and reinforced concrete, yet the legend endured. By day, commuters cross without a second thought, the sound of traffic masking the whispers of history. But as night falls and the streetlights glow weakly across the water, the bridge transforms into something unearthly. Residents of Taunton swear that at precisely 3:07 a.m., a shadow appears, swinging gently from a noose beneath the glow of the lamps. It is neither fully solid nor entirely spectral, a silhouette, etched in black, suspended in midair, as if time itself refuses to let him go. Those who have encountered the shadow describe a bone-chilling stillness when it appears. Even the wind seems to stop, and the water below turns an unnatural dark. Drivers report feeling an oppressive weight pressing down on the roof of their cars. And some claim their engines stall without warning. Horns blare reflexively, an attempt to shake the sense of danger, and in response, a terrifying echo returns. First, a scream sharp and agonized, then, as if the air itself were mocking the living, a chilling laughter that fades into the night. Some say the laughter is the drifters, twisted by time and death into something bitter. A cruel joke played on anyone who crosses his old hangout. Pedestrians are not spared. Walkers who pass beneath the bridge in the dead of night often feel a sudden rush of cold air, as if someone has walked directly past them, brushing against their shoulder. Others hear the sound of ropes creaking, the slow, rhythmic sway of a body suspended above the river. Though nothing is there when they turn to look, some describe hearing whispered threats carried by the wind, barely audible at first, then louder with every step. Do you see me? Do you remember me? It is a presence that watches, judges, and waits, tied forever to the bridge and the act of violence that created it. Urban explorers and paranormal investigators have tried to capture evidence of the haunting. Night vision cameras sometimes record a shadow suspended midair, only to vanish when reviewed in daylight. Audio devices capture screams, laughter, and what sounds like the dragging of feet along the bridge's metal supports. EVP sessions often reveal a single, repeated question: why did you leave me? Some theorize that the drifter's spirit cannot rest, bound to the bridge by fear, anger, and betrayal, while others believe the bridge itself absorbs the violence, becoming a lens through which past horrors can still be glimpsed. The bridge's notoriety has spread, bringing thrill seekers and skeptics alike. Some arrive armed with flashlights and cameras, daring the 3:07 a.m. hour in hopes of witnessing the shadow firsthand. Many leave shaken, even when they see nothing more than a shiver of movement in the corner of their vision. Stories abound of passengers in cars gripping doors and windows, eyes wide, convinced that something unseen brushes past them, or that the laughter belongs not to the night wind, but to the drifter himself. Locals advise caution: do not honk, do not stop, and never, under any circumstances, cross the bridge alone after midnight. Beyond the physical encounters, the Taunton River Bridge carries an emotional weight that is harder to quantify. Those who experience it speak of an inexplicable sadness, a sense of injustice that permeates the air. It is as if the drifter's death, violent and unceremonious, left a permanent scar upon the bridge and the surrounding landscape. Some visitors report dreams filled with the echo of the swing, the rope, the scream, and the laughter replayed in loops until morning light breaks. Even those who pass by during the day sense something off, an invisible weight pressing against the heart of the bridge, a lingering memory of cruelty and mortality. The bridge's legend continues to thrive, passed down through whispered tales and cautionary advice. Teenagers dare each other to drive across at 3:07 a.m., often returning pale and shaken, eyes wide with unspoken terror. Local historians recount the story in hushed tones, noting that while records of the hanging are scarce, the consistent eyewitness accounts give credence to something far older and more persistent than mere rumor. The Bridge of the Hanged Man has become both a landmark and a warning, a place where history refuses to remain buried, where a single act of human violence echoes eternally, and where those who dare to confront it are reminded that some shadows never rest. The Chicopee River Bridge spans the dark, sluggish waters of the Chicopee River, a structure that appears ordinary during the day but transforms into something far more sinister after nightfall. Its steel beams and concrete supports reflect the sunlight harmlessly, but locals know the bridge carries the weight of countless tragedies. Over the decades, it has been the scene of multiple accidents, drownings, and suicides, leaving an invisible residue of sorrow and rage that clings to the air like fog. Drivers passing during the daytime notice little more than the hum of tires over metal grates, Yet those who linger after dark often leave with stories that defy explanation. The bridge has long been regarded as cursed. In the early 20th century, a series of fatal car accidents claimed lives during icy winter nights, when vehicles skidded on the slick surface and plunged into the river below. Each incident left a mark on the bridge's history, a silent ledger of despair. Later, during the mid-1900s, several individuals chose the bridge as the place to end their own lives, drawn by the weight of their problems or the allure of the river's dark water. With every tragedy, whispers began to emerge, first faint murmurs that locals dismissed, then voices so persistent that pedestrians and drivers alike could not ignore them. Those who dare to visit the Chicopee River Bridge alone after dark often report a sensation that is difficult to describe. A crushing weight presses on the chest, an invisible hand tightening around the ribs, as if the bridge itself resents their intrusion. Some describe a cold that seeps through clothing and bones, unrelenting and unnatural, chilling them to the marrow. Shadows seem to move along the guardrails, and reflections in rearview mirrors sometimes show figures that vanish when looked at directly. The most terrifying element, however, is the whispering. Low, insistent voices murmur from nowhere and everywhere, urging listeners toward the water, murmuring a single word over and over: jump. Even experienced drivers feel the compulsion. They speak of a momentary trance, when hands tighten on the wheel and their eyes are drawn to the edge, as though the unseen voices are guiding them. Some try to resist, blinking and shaking their heads, only to find the urge growing stronger. Pedestrians crossing on foot report that the whispers become personal, calling their names or recounting memories only they could know, wrapping grief and guilt around them like a suffocating fog. Many who experience this say they felt the presence of multiple entities at once, some angry, some mournful, all tied inexorably to the river and the bridge. Attempts to rationalize the phenomena fail. Paranormal investigators who have visited describe thermographic anomalies along the bridge, metal supports, and sudden drops in temperature that coincide with footsteps or whispers. EVP recordings often reveal faint murmurs, too distorted to fully comprehend, but haunting enough to make listeners shiver. Some hear laughter, some crying, others the unmistakable command, jump. Researchers note that the effect seems strongest during the late hours, between midnight and 3 a.m., when the bridge is at its quietest and the veil between the living and the dead appears thinnest. Locals avoid the bridge entirely after dark, warning travelers to take alternate routes. Stories circulate of drivers who followed the whispers, only to swerve wildly at the last second, escaping unscathed but forever haunted by the sensation of being watched. Others speak of seeing figures on the guardrails, standing silently and unmoving, faceless silhouettes that seem to hover just above the edge. They vanish when approached, leaving only the echo of their presence lingering in the mind. Those brave enough to linger on foot describe a sensation of invisible fingers tugging at clothes, urging, pleading, or threatening. The bridge is not only a site of supernatural activity, but a focal point for human fear and memory. Every tragedy, every death, has left a psychic scar, accumulating over decades. The river below is deceptively calm during the day, but at night it becomes a mirror reflecting anguish, a surface that seems to ripple with unseen energy. Some say the water itself holds the voices, amplifying them across the structure, creating a chorus of desperation that can overwhelm even the strongest mind. Hikers, joggers, and late-night travelers often tell the same story. The bridge feels alive, and its life is not welcoming. Urban legends have grown around the Chicopee River Bridge. Teenagers dare one another to cross alone, seeking proof of the haunting. Many return pale, trembling, unable to speak clearly, insisting that the whispers were real, urging them to leave the world behind. Even rational skeptics feel an instinctive unease, as though unseen eyes are tracking every step, every movement. Some local families simply reroute their drives after dusk, refusing to test the bridge's will. Signs of carelessness are met with immediate reminders, sudden gusts of wind, unexplainable flickers of headlights, and the persistent, low voice that seems to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. To this day, the Chicopee River Bridge stands as a threshold between the mundane and the terrifying. Its steel and concrete hide no outward signs of malice, yet those who cross it at night know differently. A sense of dread, a chorus of whispers, the ghostly compulsion to step over the edge. These experiences persist, generation after generation. The bridge is a monument, not just to the accidents and deaths that occurred there, but to the lasting imprint of despair. A place where the restless dead continue to speak, urging the living to remember, to fear, and sometimes to step too close to the darkness that waits below. The Fall River Bridge is an ordinary structure by day, stretching over the quiet waters that wind through the city of Fall River, Massachusetts. But when darkness falls, locals whisper that it becomes something far more sinister. A conduit for the restless spirit of Lizzie Borden herself. Decades have passed since the infamous murders in the Borden household, yet the shadow of that night lingers over the town, seeping into the streets, the old Victorian homes, and most chillingly, the bridge that spans the waters, where tragedy's echoes seem to gather. Witnesses describe an unsettling presence on the bridge after nightfall. They tell of seeing a solitary figure standing on the railings, her posture rigid, her gaze fixed downward. At first, many assume it's a prank, someone leaning against the guardrails, lost in thought, but as they approach or shine their car headlights in her direction, the figure does not shift like a human would. Instead, she remains perfectly still, a dark silhouette against a faint reflection of the river below. Some who have stopped their vehicles report the unmistakable shape of an axe, gleaming faintly under the moonlight, clutched in her hands. Then, just as suddenly as she appears, she vanishes, dissolving into mist, as though swallowed by the night itself. It is not just her appearances that haunt the bridge. Travelers speak of an oppressive weight in the air, a chill that seeps through the tires, the car doors, and into the bones of anyone daring enough to cross alone. Footsteps seem to echo behind them, though the bridge is empty, and the faint scraping of metal against concrete can be heard even when no vehicles are present. Some pedestrians report that the atmosphere thickens as they reach the midpoint, a sudden hush falling over the sounds of the city around them, replaced by an almost imperceptible whisper. Many claim the voice is feminine, soft but insistent, as if reciting words from a time long gone. Others swear they hear the slow, measured rhythm of boots pacing the walkway, matching no human cadence. The legend of Lizzie Borden's spirit crossing the Fall River Bridge has grown with each generation. Tourists, ghost hunters, and thrill seekers arrive after dark, hoping for a glimpse. Some carry cameras or video recorders, only to find their equipment malfunctioning inexplicably. Batteries die within minutes, screens flicker, and footage often shows nothing at all, despite witnesses insisting they saw her with their own eyes. Others claim that even when a recording is successful, the figure appears as nothing more than a blur or a shadow, impossible to clearly identify, yet undeniably human in form and intent. Locals speak in hushed tones of the stories passed down through families. They recount near misses where drivers, startled by the sudden apparition, have swerved, braked, or even stopped entirely in the middle of the bridge. Some swear they felt a compulsion to slow down or even to get out of their cars, as though invisible hands guided them toward the railings. But none of those who approached reported harm. Instead, there is a persistent sense that the figure watches, evaluates, then releases its focus, vanishing into the mist without a trace. The bridge becomes a stage, the ghost of Lizzie Borden, both observer and observed, a reminder of a violent history that refuses to fade. Psychics and paranormal investigators have attempted to study the bridge, using thermal cameras, EVP recorders, and other devices. Some have captured fleeting images of a woman in Victorian attire, standing perfectly still or gliding across the walkway. AVP sessions occasionally reveal whispered words that sound like fragmented sentences. "He's gone, no one knows," or simply the soft echo of her name, Lizzie. Temperature readings often drop abruptly when the figure is present, and sudden gusts of wind sweep across the bridge, though the surrounding air remains still. The phenomena are strongest in the late hours, particularly around midnight, when the city sleeps and the bridge is left alone with its history. The bridge also seems to respond to emotion. Those who approach it in fear or with intent to challenge the legend often feel the oppressive weight of tension, a surge of panic, as if the spirit recognizes their curiosity as intrusion. Conversely, those who approach quietly, with respect, sometimes report only a fleeting chill or a sense of being observed from the corner of their eyes. There is a consensus among longtime residents that the bridge is not merely haunted, but reactive, a place where the tragedy of Lizzie Borden's life and its aftermath has left a psychic imprint, a lingering resonance that interacts with the living in unpredictable ways. Even decades later, the Fall River Bridge is a place of both allure and terror. Its ordinary steel and concrete hide the extraordinary, the bridge serving as a liminal space where the past bleeds into the present. The river below reflects the moonlight in eerie, shifting patterns, and the mist that rises from the water often seems thicker than natural fog, as if the air itself remembers the dark events of that infamous summer. Those who drive or walk across after dark often feel an invisible presence riding alongside them, the sensation of being watched by something that is both human and otherworldly. The Quincy Bridge stretches across the dark waters like a silent sentinel, unremarkable by day but transformed when night falls. Locals speak of it in hushed tones, referring to it as a place where the ordinary rules of reality seem to unravel. The structure itself is simpler, steel and concrete bridge, spanning the river, but the stories attached to it make it feel alive, as though it remembers every passing vehicle, every hurried footstep, and every lingering fear. Travelers who cross after dusk often report experiences that cannot be explained, occurrences that seem to place them in a world just adjacent to their own, a world where someone or something walks alongside them in the darkness. The first accounts came from truckers and delivery drivers, those who routinely cross the bridge in the late hours. They spoke of hearing footsteps beside their vehicles, steady, deliberate, matching the rhythm of their tires over the asphalt. At first, many assumed it was another pedestrian, perhaps a jogger or a maintenance worker. But there were no sidewalks, no paths for a person to walk, and when drivers glanced to the side, nothing appeared. Sometimes, the sound would stop and resume with perfect timing, as though the footsteps were observing the vehicle, adjusting, pacing alongside. Then came the sightings. Drivers described a figure gliding beside their car, a shape humanoid yet somehow distorted, moving with an unnatural fluidity. The figure was often clad in dark clothing, blending seamlessly into the night, and its face, when glimpsed, was indistinct, blurred as if shrouded in smoke or mist. Witnesses recall a cold shiver crawling down their spines, the air around the car suddenly growing heavy, and a sense of being watched that persisted long after the figure vanished. More unnervingly, those who dared to glance into their rearview mirrors upon exiting the bridge found nothing. The shape that had accompanied them for the length of the span disappeared as if it had never existed, leaving only the memory of its presence and the echo of unseen footsteps. The phenomenon does not seem bound to a particular type of vehicle or time of night. Sedans, trucks, even bicycles have been reported to experience the same eerie accompaniment. Many travelers recount that the figure appears more frequently during foggy nights or after rain, when the bridge is slick and visibility is low. Some speculate that the moisture in the air amplifies the presence, making it easier to perceive, though no one can explain why the figure appears at all. Locals have woven a series of theories around the haunting. Some believe it is the spirit of someone who died on the bridge, a restless soul still traversing the span, seeking companionship or perhaps revenge. Others think it is a kind of echo, a residual haunting tied to the anxiety and tension of those who cross after dark. Psychics who have investigated describe a thin, fluctuating energy along the bridge, colder and denser than the surrounding air, and an impression of a consciousness watching, patient and silent. One driver recounted an experience that left him shaken for months. Traveling home after midnight, he noticed a familiar sound of footsteps beside his car. The rhythm matched his pace exactly. He tried to speed up, thinking it might disappear, but the sound persisted, unwavering. As he approached the end of the bridge, he risked a glance to his side and saw the figure, taller than expected, gliding without effort. Heart racing, he checked his rearview mirror upon reaching solid ground, and it was gone. The sudden absence of the figure was almost more terrifying than its presence, leaving him with an uneasy realization that whatever followed him was unconcerned with human rules or expectations. Others describe a similar feeling of disorientation, as if the bridge itself bends time slightly, elongating or compressing the journey. They report hearing faint whispers, unintelligible murmurs carried on the wind that seem to come from every direction at once. Some have claimed to feel an icy hand brush along the side of their vehicle, or a sudden, inexplicable pressure on the driver's seat, pressing them down as they try to maintain control. The experience is never violent, yet the sensations are undeniably physical, leaving those who crossed a bridge afterward questioning the line between perception and reality. The Quincy Bridge has earned a reputation among ghost hunters and thrill seekers who come specifically to experience the phenomenon. Many arrive with cameras, recorders, and even thermal imaging devices, hoping to capture proof of the gliding figure. Yet most leave frustrated as the entity eludes technological capture. Cameras produce only darkness, and microphones capture faint static or unidentifiable noises, but never the footsteps or whispers experienced firsthand. Some investigators suggest that the bridge itself is the key, that the energy there is sentient and selective, revealing itself only to those it chooses. Despite the warnings, curiosity continues to draw people to the Quincy Bridge at night. Locals advise caution. Never drive alone. Keep your eyes on the road, and avoid glancing too long into the rearview mirror. For those who have crossed and seen the figure, the memory lingers long after the journey ends. The image of the gliding silhouette, the rhythm of footsteps that match your own, and the emptiness left in the rearview mirror create a lasting unease. The bridge is not just a crossing over water. It is a threshold, a place where the ordinary and the supernatural intersect, a space where time, space, and perception bend under the weight of something unseen. Massachusetts is a state built on layers, history, tragedy, and legend stacked like stone. Its bridges don't just cross rivers, they cross time. They carry the laughter of the living and the sorrow of the dead. Next time you drive across one, remember, every bridge is a passage, and some lead to places not meant for the living. If you enjoyed tonight's journey into the haunted bridges of Massachusetts, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story with a fellow night traveler. Until next time, keep your lights on, your mirrors checked, and whatever you do, don't look back while crossing.